I think F1 is overrated, and I'm here to tell you why. When I was a kid, I was watching F1 and not caring about the sport. I picked the driver that I liked, I picked the team that I liked, and I cheered for them. And that team and driver was at the time Michael Schumacher and the Ferrari team. Why? Because I like the color red, and Schumacher was a name that I liked the sound of it. Also, he was winning very frequently, do you remember that? Now, things have changed a bit in the world, and instead of Ferrari and Schumacher, we have Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes team winning without any competition whatsoever. You could make a case for Red Bull, or you could make for last year's Ferrari that they might have a chance, but I strongly disagree here, because this year is the perfect example of how much F1 just simply doesn't want to change. In the past I mentioned that I quit watching F1 around the year 2014 because it just turned into a very boring series in my opinion. It has nothing to do with the regulation changes or that they switched from VS to VC. But what it has to do with is that they just simply didn't really care about how the teams would adapt to the series. And that is one thing that somewhat carries over to this day as well. F1 is boring. Well, not really. Not all the time, really. There is still this weird sense that something might happen. Something might happen that is not usual. That is, for example, the first two races. Really? First race of 2020. Like, was it really unusual? Yeah, Mercedes still won by a long mile, right? And if anything, the first race was just a huge rerun of last year. We had Hamilton and Albon crashing, we had a McLaren finishing on the podium because of a penalty, and in the second race it was the crash of Interlagos in 2019. To me, F1 has this moment, has this hype around it, but really there are so much things happening in other series, so much more action happening in other series that it is really hard for me to get interested in F1, really. And that one comes from a guy who wants to watch these races to get in there with other people. If you look at any other series on the world, just watch it for more than 20 minutes and there's bound to happen something. Meanwhile in F1 currently, if you just watch the Hungarian race, well, outside of a few moments there was barely anything to actually watch. The second half of the race, I think, was the most boring race that I watched so far in this year. And I rewatched a lot of races here and there, so keep that in mind. To me, the Mercedes dominance perfectly summed up in the final few laps of the race, where Bottas could get the point for doing the best lap in the series and maybe put up a little hope that Hamilton will not win for another year straight, but the team just tells Lewis, okay, we can give you soft tires here and get an extra point if you want, and that's what they do. Without any signs of worrying or frustration or any risk, Hamilton comes into pits, gets a fresh set of soft tires and does the fastest lap of the race. A lap time that beats every record in the past, and with that secures the win for Hamilton and more likely for the championship as well. There are a few races here and there that still can change up the things here and there, but I think that this race absolutely destroyed almost every hope that I had for F1 in this season. The first two races were action-packed, especially the first one, and the second race was quite decent, but really, this series would be so much more competitive if the Mercedes team would not be in the series whatsoever. And that comes from a guy who originally absolutely loved to watch a racing team dominate the entire field. Because keep in mind, I was a Schumacher fan back in the days. But now, I just find this absolutely boring, absolutely uninspired. You look at any other racing series and there's never a guaranteed winner. Yet if you look at F1, there's just no way around it. Mercedes will be the dominant team whatsoever. There's absolutely no competition around them. Red Bull has trouble with the car. Ferrari was most likely cheating last year. And the rest of the team are just fighting for the medals. Racing Point is only competent because they copied last year's car. But then again, that's nothing new. Everyone acts like that Racing Point made a no in the series because they copied last year's car. But then again, you look at Haas, they've been using Ferrari parts in the past, and you look at all of the other teams, and copying is nothing new to F1. The double diffuser back when the Brown GP came out, Brown team came out, absolutely dominated in the series, and F1 did nothing about it in that year. They could easily say that, okay, we are going to ban this for the next race. They did that in the past, but they don't seem to care about this whatsoever this year. They absolutely approved the dash system, even though it was only appearing on the team that absolutely dominated the series for the past 6 years. And I guess that's gonna be one thing that will stick with F1 for the future, one thing that will not change. Honestly, I'm annoyed by this, and like I said, the Hungaroring race of F1 completely changed my way I look at F1 in this season. I still have my hopes for next year and for 2022 when they bring out the new cars with the regulation changes and the cost cap, because I think that could maybe change things in F1. But I'm a lot more interested about F2 and F3 at this point. And frankly, I think F1 is overrated. You have all of these drivers wishing to get into F1. They put their life at risk for driving in the other series, driving at the high speed in different conditions, only to get into F1 and drive in the worst car because that's what they can get into. You look at Russell, he got a seat in Williams, and for the past 2 years his best results is getting into Q2 and maybe scoring 1 or 2 points. Meanwhile, you look at all of these other series, for example F2, F3, Super Formula, Formula E, and just mentioning Formula E, 2019 season, for the first 7 races there was like 6 different race winners from like 5 different nations or whatsoever. So the series, all of the other series in the world, has more chances for drivers than F1 currently. Yet F1 is still the one who gets the most view, and I don't really get it why. The series is not fair to the drivers, it's not fair to the teams, and frankly it doesn't even care about itself. And I don't want him to bring out any controversy here, but I think that they are focusing on the wrong thing with the Black Lives Matter thing. There is so much wrong in the world that, especially right now, all I want to watch is just cars going around the track and not getting told that I should hear more about what's wrong in the world. I still have my hopes for 2020. They are very small, to be honest. And I have my hopes for 2022 as well. For 2021, I have yet to see. The return of Alonso could mean something, but I think it will be more of a similar thing of Russell's case. As for the rest of the video, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good day or night. I'll be seeing you around.